afternoon, podcast listeners. This is your boy Marcus Norman from Gentleman Style Podcast, your host of the number one podcast in America, coming to you live and direct. I hope you're having a good week. I know I am having a productive week and trying to stay engaged, trying to stay tuned in, trying to stay dialed up. I'm sorry I missed you guys a couple weeks back with an episode, but I am here back on the grind. And one of the many things that we all have noticed, you all have noticed, that I have noticed, definitely as African American male in society, is the potential of not potential, but the actual events that are going on in the world, and they can't be ignored. They're on the news, they're on the media, they're in our face, on the billboards, they're all over the place, and so it can't be ignored. So I wanted to give, like always, some useful tips, and as you notice in the title is how to stay out of the electronic judicial plantation. Yes, how to stay out of jail. And I want to try and offer some useful tips to help you stay out of jail. In these critical times, more and more African Americans are protesting and rioting and looting and destroying personal and private property. And so I want to make sure to arm you with the best tools to protect yourselves and to stay off of the electronic plantation, because it is crucial as a society, and there is a significant damage that will occur to your life if you are ever incarcerated and placed in the judicial electronic system. And it can have lasting long term effects on your life for the long road. And so it is absolutely paramount to make sure that you are well versed and you are well educated on how you can stay out of jail and out of the judicial electronic system. So the first tip I'm going to give you here is one that's kind of, it's big and it's bold, and although we can sit at the rooftops and shout it out to the rest of the world, it has to be said. It's been said over and over, and it's please, 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 do not drink and drive, and do not, for you will get a DUI. And a DUI has a minimum financial impact of at least $10,000. It's going to cost in court costs, legal fees, legal processing, electronic devices having to be installed in your car, and the impact, you just don't want that impact on your life. But that is the surefire way, and that is the quickest way to get into the electronic system and to potentially ruin your life for a very, very long time. That financial impact is no small amount. Unless you have sitting on $10,000, be my guest. But for the most part, most of the people I know, and most people you probably know, don't have that kind of money. And a DUI is a surefire way to assure yourself to financially devastate yourself for many years to come. And I know when I used to sell insurance for several companies, car insurance was one of our top sellers. And just meeting the people impacted and devastated financially because they suffered a DUI in the past was ridiculous. You're talking a $500, $600 car premium every single month due to the increased risk that the insurance company has to take on because you suffered a DUI on your personal record. And so I remember taking phone calls from several customers having to pay that monthly premium, having their driving privileges restricted or revoked completely, having electronic devices, breathalyzers installed in their cars, and that cost comes at your expense. That's not going to be paid for by anyone else. That's not paid for by your insurance company. That's not paid for, by your employer. That's paid by you out of pocket to have your court ordered device breathalyzer installed in your car system and connected to your ignition system. And so if you're not familiar with that system it's a breathalyzer that's going to test your alcohol toxation level, and you have to breathe into it every single time you enter your vehicle in order to turn on your car. And if your breathalyzed breath is over a certain percentage, your car will not allow you to turn on until your alcohol toxation level on your breath goes down within safe and regulated levels. And so, and one of the things, I had a friend, he, even when he used mouthwash, he had to use non-alcoholic mouthwash, and or substitutes, because mouthwash has an alcohol content in it. and that would register on his breathalyzer and prevent him. He would be late to work many times because he would forget a habit that he had done for years is use mouthwash, and a habit that he had done for years. Now he had to break that habit, and oftentimes he was late to work because he's trying to wait for the alcohol in his breath to subside so he can breathe into his breathalyzer and turn his car on. And so catching a DUI is expensive. Like I said, that $500 a month car insurance premium. Not to mention, you have to find a car insurance provider that'll even insure you with a DUI. Most companies will not take that risk. When you have a DUI in your driving record, that is with you and that is on there for your insurance provider to see. And it is not uncommon for your insurance provider to drop your coverage and completely toss you to the side and say, we no longer want to take the risk in providing insurance to you because you have a DUI on your record. And so that financial burden, along with that $10,000 cost of having to court costs, maintenance, lawyers, court fees, appearances, activation and deactivation of that car system in your vehicle, is just not having your driving privileges again restricted or limited or even revoked completely. That can be devastating, especially if driving is your profession. There are, if you're a truck driver and you get a DUI, you can kiss your career goodbye. You can kiss your, if you're a taxi driver, Uber driver, Lyft driver, any kind of driver. If that is a part of your revenue stream, you can pretty much count that expense out because most insurance providers will drop you, and you can't drive a vehicle without car insurance by law in every state. So the first thing I wanted to point out is do not drink and drive. My second point is don't be outside late at night for no reason, right? Soliciting and hanging out after hours, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. I know it's very strange to say, and I know it's inconvenient, and some of you may be chewing at your pride and saying, "Well, I can do whatever I want to do because I'm a free person. I have the right to be outside." There is no point, and I've lived by this mindset for a long time, and have never had to run the risk of being tracked down or incarcerated. But there is no point in being out after hours, just hanging out and soliciting outside for no reason. And so, if you want to catch the eye of some law enforcement officers, go ahead and hang outside, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, and just hang out on the street curb for no reason, and you will find yourself being addressed by more law enforcement than you probably ever have in your lifetime because it looks suspicious. There are many neighbors um, who, if it's hanging out in the wrong neighborhood, just again at the wee hours of the night. I remember one time I was sitting in my car. I was near my house, but I wasn't by my house. And what it was is I was entertaining a phone call. But because I was where I was parked looked suspicious, and there was plenty of people um, walking by my car and saw me in my car on my phone having a conversation. And so sure, and this is in my own neighborhood where I live, where I reside. And surely enough, in about 10 minutes, a police officer pulls up to the back of my vehicle to assess why am I here. Now, obviously, I didn't get a ticket. Nothing was happening because once that officer approached my vehicle, I handed in my driver's license showing my resident address on it, my current resident address on it, and he was able to quickly identify that I did live in the area. And I simply told him that I was having a phone conversation and didn't want to drive while on the phone. And he completely understood, and they let me to my business, and I continued finished my phone call, and I continued the rest of the way home in my personal vehicle. But still, just the simple fact that I was parked, no one recognized me or no one recognized my car, it looks suspicious. So hanging out in areas that you have no business being in, and staying away from hanging out late at night for no apparent reason, you know, minimizes your potential for getting locked up and getting incarcerated and getting entered in the electronic judicial plantation. And so you have to do your utmost best to stay out of the electronic plantation because it can affect your job, your career, and your future for many years to come. There are many companies that won't hire you with a record. There are many employers. I remember working in the financial industry where there were many people that were looking for a job and desperately trying to do better, but they were turned down more times than not because they couldn't get past the background investigation because they were always arrested for mistakes in the past. And I'm not saying that that was right or wrong. What I am saying, because that is on their record, they were marked and blacklisted for life. And so they couldn't get that dream job or they couldn't get into that corporate job or get into that corporate position because of what their past dictated for them. So it is absolutely crucial that you do your best to stay. I can't harp on this enough, to stay out of the electronic system and judicial system because it can only benefit you and keep you safe in the long run. The next tip I want to offer you is properly maintain your vehicle and update your license and registration regularly. One of the biggest things that a law enforcement officer will pull someone out again late at night for is a busted out taillight or a headlight or vehicle registration is not up to date. Um, I have been pulled over once or twice before for my, not maintaining my vehicle registration and my licenses. Now, during that time, I was in the military, and when you deploy, there's no possible way for me to deploy to update my vehicle registration. Sometimes before I went out to sea. And so, my, so I would often have to describe to the officer that I'm military and that I just recently came back from deployment. I'm aware that my vehicle registration is expired, and I would show them the because I would, whenever I updated my vehicle registration and my title insurance and my title information on my vehicle, I would always print off that receipt from the DMV website, and I would keep it in my car because it has a transaction number and it has accounting information attached to it. So when I would make that payment for my renewal, I would print it off and keep it in my vehicle until my updated vehicle registration and tags arrived in the mail. And so it is absolutely important to maintain your vehicle at all times. Check on your vehicle, and not only check on your vehicle and your wife's vehicle, but check on your kids' vehicle if they have a vehicle as well. Make sure all the vehicles are up to date under your stewardship. Make sure the vehicles in your home are up to date and maintained to prevent those unnecessary and those frustrating um, traffic stops. And I know, like I said, I know there are times when I'm out late at night and you just don't want to be bothered. And sometimes we get in our egos and we want to talk back to the officers, but it is absolutely necessary to prevent this. And so if we do the legwork up front, we can prevent the long-term pain in the back end. And another tip, my third tip here is I want to say is maintain professionalism and maintain respect at all times. It is not wise to sit there and talk trash to someone with a gun and pepper spray and handcuffs who can potentially ruin your life. Any traffic stop I have ever entertained has gone well because I've always maintained formal and dignified respect for myself and the law enforcement officer directly in front of me. If I disagree with what they're telling me, I still maintain that high morality and that politeness and that respect and admiration for the uniform and the job that they do because I do not want to get arrested. I will deal with this in court and I will explain what I need to explain and what I have to explain to the judge in a more formal setting, in a more calmer atmosphere. And I get it. It's hard not to get your feelings mixed into sometimes what we feel is an unfair assessment or traffic stop, and so we want to argue our case right then and there. That is not the time or place. Maintain professionalism, maintain punctuality, and just do what the officer says, and you'll find yourself quickly on your way. I can't stress that enough. This is a unique tip that I want to offer you as my listeners, something that we can, as men, we can incorporate in our homes. But keep credentials on you. One of the big things that I've learned and discovered that will prevent a law enforcement, sometimes will prevent a law enforcement officer from arresting you, is keeping credentials on you. And keeping, and what credentials are is it's a small thing that you can keep in your wallet or your pocket or your glove box, and just list off how what you do, where you live in the community. It also circumvents the officer asking you questions because you've already provided that information, properly credentialed and properly verified. And keeping credentials on you can keep you out of jails. And like I said, what it describes is just a quick reference: your name, your address, your local church, if or your religion, denomination, the address of the church, your pastor, and your lawyer is a big thing. It lists your lawyers and maybe a law enforcement officer that you know in the actual police force of where you reside. Those things give you credentials, and it places you, it gives the police officer that potentially is arresting you or potentially pulling you over an idea of who you are in your community. And that is absolutely 100% important and crucial, because it gives the officer, like I said, it circumvents the many questions that the officer may or may not ask you. And it gives you placement in the community, and that you're not, some riffraff or some, and it removes this any speculation of who you are, or what you do, or what you're about. And so, like I said, it can list your name, employer, your address, and who you are in the community, as far as what church you attend, your pastor's name, your lawyer's name and number, and a potential law enforcement officer, um, their name, rank, and contact number on that credentials. And it's something that local law enforcement are familiar with. Law enforcement officers are familiar with providing credentials everywhere they go. So it's not something new or unfamiliar for them. And this is the exact verbiage that you should use when you are addressed by a local law enforcement officer. Hey, Mr. Officer, thank you for asking. I want to give you my credentials. I'm going to reach in my glove box, so I'm going to reach in my back pocket, and I would like to provide you my credentials. And that is exactly what you say. And you just, after you say that, you go in your pocket and you pull out and you keep your hands where he can see him, or her where you can see him, and you provide them your credentials along with your ID. And it is good to establish those credentials early on, even if they're not asked for. And just explain to them that you are trying to participate and provide them information as much as possible, and you're following instructions. And again, to not be rude. All right. The fourth thing, the next thing I want to talk about is hiring a lawyer. Set up an appointment, schedule an appointment with a lawyer in your local community, and get with someone and have a free consultation, and collect some business cards. This is absolutely important, especially in that previous step, with properly credentializing yourself and making yourself known and establishing a footprint in your community. Because if you are incarcerated, you want to have a lawyer that you can easily and quickly reach out to fairly quickly, because time needs to be on your side, and you need to be able to reach your lawyer, and to prevent yourself again from entering that electronic plantation system. And so scheduling that 30-minute free consultation with a lawyer only takes a couple minutes. Reach out to your local lawyer, say, hey, I'm establishing my credentials in case I ever get arrested. I would like to have your business card and information on hand, and a couple of your business cards on hand, so I can leave in my car or my wife's car or my kid's car, and so they can have access to a lawyer when necessary, and receive proper consultation if the need ever arises. And that's absolutely important and crucial. And so again, it doesn't cost you anything. It's fairly inexpensive. It doesn't cost you anything, and it's inexpensive to do so, to just set up that 30-minute call. And most lawyers who are looking for gainful employment, looking for the work, criminal justice lawyers, I must be clear, criminal justice lawyers, criminal lawyers, who will stand by your side and help you get out of that electronic plantation, and prevent you from getting entered into that electronic database that can potentially ruin your life and career and your long term, and affect your long term goals. The last point I want to make here is protect your kids. Again, using that credentialization system, making sure the vehicle is maintained, and making sure and holding them accountable, if that's you're choosing to hold them accountable, to making sure they notify you of when the vehicle needs to be maintained, and establishing that early on, before even buying them a vehicle, that this is something that is very, very important, especially in this day and age. And one of the unique tips that I learned is when, and it's unique, and it can seem extreme, but when we're talking about the safety of our children, it can be well worth it. Oftentimes, when our kids are stopped, some officers can assume that the children have drugs on them, and for the most part, I like to think that our children, depending on the friends that they have, kids will make poor decisions, and so you want to protect your child as best as possible. So one of the unique tips that I heard from a parent is that goes to Home Depot or Lowe's and buys that styrofoam mesh liquid, and the vehicle that he purchases for his son or daughter, he sprays and fills any potential nook or cranny or anywhere that someone can easily hide and stash narcotics and drugs or alcohol in the vehicle that they purchased for their vehicle. And that foam will expand, and it won't hurt any of the equipment, and it prevents your son or your child from stashing or hiding any unmentionables in the vehicle that could potentially get your child incarcerated. And so it protects your children, it protects our children from who may be in the company of bad people and don't even know it, from getting arrested and getting again incarcerated and getting placed in the electronic system of the judicial court system, which is what we are trying to protect our families from. And so, men, I leave you with these tips. I hope they're helpful. I hope they're substantial to you, and I hope they add value to your household. And like always, this is Gentleman Style Podcast. This is Marcus Norman, your host, signing off. Take care of your family, take care of your friends, and take care of business. This is Marcus Norman, Gentleman Style Podcast, signing off. Love you.